I was thinking about this USAID because essentially Musk described it. He said it's not just like an apple with a worm in it. It's just a load of worms with no apple. That's how he described USAID.
The shadow government, the real shadow government, which is run by Dems and their globalist allies, what they did, Lazo, was they realized there are certain things that they needed to fund, and they wanted the American taxpayer to do it, but they couldn't get the American people to go along with that, and thus they couldn't get the United States government to go along with it. So what they did was they created basically a shell company. They started funneling billions of dollars into USAID. And when you look it up and you see their spokespeople, now their website has been down since Saturday, and I think that's because Musk's people brought it down. But if you were to find any news stories related to USAID, it all sounds very warm and fuzzy. That they're doing such nice things, that they're helping people in the third world. And presumably, as it relates to immigration, they're trying to stem the flow of illegal immigration into the United States. But the fact of the matter was, they're doing exactly the opposite. Welcome to another edition of WTF, the world of Taunton and Fox. And we're in actually two very separate worlds today. He is in London, which is a world unto itself. Londonistan is where he is. And I am in Switzerland. And behind you, you see the Swiss Alps, which are, of course, really beautiful. And right behind that bell tower, which will probably chime during this show, just be ready for that, is the Matterhorn. The Matterhorn is just right there. So how are you, Laws of Fox? We have not done a WTF forever. So how are you, brother?
I'm all right, bro. Yes, we haven't done a WTF forever because I decided we were both in different places and running around the world. You were trying to chase down the USAID trans cult and then on to Davos for the WEF. And I was at the inauguration. We haven't publicly spoken since the inauguration. How do you feel about the first few very slow, gentle days of the new Trump administration?
Well, first, let me say that I miss you. It's weird that you were flying to the United States when I was flying to Europe. So we could practically wave, in planes as we change. So I've missed seeing you, missed talking to you. I am loving what Trump is doing. I mean, I honestly, every day I just kind of get up and it's almost like it's almost like a meme. I sort of get up and yawn and the birds are singing and the wind is blowing. It's a gentle breeze is blowing through my hair and I'm smelling flower. Yeah, exactly. Right here in Switzerland. And so I am loving it because this is what people wanted to see Trump do in term number one. And I think Trump was a little naive. And now he's doing it. He's destroying the deep state. And what he's doing to USAID, United States Agency for International Development, brother, I'm here for it because I've been all over this for a very long time. And so to see what Trump is doing is great. But you were at the inauguration. I mean, you were there, probably wearing like a tuxedo and swilling champagne and, going around and meeting very important people while I was doing the dirty work in a jungle in Central America. But that's okay. You go ahead. You have your big time and you hobnob with all the rich and famous people while I go and do the grunt work.
It's true. That's I'm glad that you've realised that is our separation of tasks in our relationship. You go and get attacked by mosquitoes, and I go and hobnob with things. It was great, the inauguration. I sat down with this fascinating. I was invited by the Heritage Institute, and I sat down at the rally beforehand. Which, if anyone hasn't been to a rally before of Trump's, I can highly recommend them. They're very good fun. I was sat down next to one of Vance's team's father, and he was a very, very committed historian, actually American historian. Now, I don't know a great deal about American history, but he filled me in all the way on American history. So it was in between speeches and in between great, Kid Rock crazy performances, I was learning a bit about American history from him. So he was called Jim. I can't remember his surname. I've forgotten now. But he was lovely. And then we did. We were meant to go back to the arena the next day. It was very, very cold. But after going to the rally and the security and all of that, we decided that we would go and watch the actual inauguration with Kid Rock. So that's what we did instead. And then we went to a ball in the evening, and then we hung around with some interesting people, bumped into a few British journalists, upset them, some terrible leftist journalists who were staying in the same hotel as us. And we had a really, really nice time. It was really good. I'm so happy. I mean, I'm selfish because I am so, as you say, is doing a whole lot of winning over there in America, dismantling, cutting off every head of the woke hydra. And we're looking at Britain, and Britain is, the chasm between the two once great nations has probably wider than it's ever been in my life, certainly in my lifetime. So on the one hand, I'm joyful for America, and on the other hand, I'm miserable for Britain.
But I think Britain is next. I think it's coming to Britain. I think that Trump, he's only been in office, 3 weeks? I mean, just a short period of time. What he's done in that period of time has been astonishing, from not just the destruction of USAID, but the what he's done with Canada and Mexico with the tariffs there, stemming the flow of fentanyl into the United States. What he did with the Marxist, a terrorist. I mean, he's a genuine terrorist, Marxist terrorist president of Colombia, Gustavo Petro. I mean, Trump is using the bully pulpit. And he's using the might of America the way that it ought to be used. And I'm just loving what he's doing. And I think eventually he's going to start putting a lot of pressure on your prime minister and your woke government. So I think that's coming. I think we're going to see America, figuratively storming the beaches of Britain and bringing freedom back to Britain again. It's just going to take him a little bit of time to get there, but I think it's coming.
Yeah, I agree. I think he will definitely lean on Starmer because look at the way he's leaning on everybody else. And I think that Musk is right and Trump is right that they both have a fondness for the UK, but also the UK is a sort of gateway to Europe, and I suppose it's America's point man when it comes to dealing with problems in Europe. And we're going to realise, because there's nothing now to stop. He's pulling out of all of these UN agencies, as you say. You've got the American USAID, which I'd like to know a bit more about later on. But I think that he's going to essentially make life very, very uncomfortable for Keir Starmer, who is very, very unpopular here anyway. And it would be good to see some change. I just don't know what form that change takes. We'll have to see. We've got a surging political party Reform. I'm skeptical about them. And I noticed with Trump throughout the thing, and I've said this on other conversations I've had, everything he would always say, they always accuse him of being a sort of horrible, self-centered egomaniac, which, he certainly is an egomaniac. But every time he spoke at the rally, that very, very powerful speech that he gave, the inauguration speech itself, was always about that he was a servant to America, and I think that's it's just wonderful. I was thinking about this USAID because essentially Musk described it. He said it's not just like an apple with a worm in it. It's just a load of worms with no apple. That's how he described USAID. So it's been used, including to fund the BBC propaganda channel. It's a major investor in the BBC. It's been used to spread this sort of vile leftist dogma around the world. And I'm also imagining it's probably a good way of laundering money, I would imagine as well. But that's tell us, for us ignorant English people, what USAID was. It was formed by JFK, was it, or RFK?
It was how was it founded? It was founded as an executive order, but I cannot remember which president. It could have been JFK who who founded it. And honestly, I don't know a great deal about its murky origins. What I can tell you is the way that it's being used now. So the United States government, the shadow government, the real shadow government, not the one that Chuck Schumer is suddenly very worried about, but the actual shadow government, which is run by Dems and their globalist allies, what they did, Lazo, was they realized there are certain things that they needed to fund, and they wanted the American taxpayer to do it, but they couldn't get the American people to go along with that, and thus they couldn't get the United States government to go along with it. So what they did was they created basically a shell company that ostensibly was about international development, the United States Agency for International Development. So presumably to provide some assistance, some direction, some counsel to impoverished countries around the world. I told you that was going to happen. How loud is that, Lacey? Is it pretty bad? Well,
No, it's
there we
good.
go. So we're fine.
The hills are alive with the sound. Sorry.
So what they did was they started funneling billions of dollars into USAID. And when you look it up and you see their spokespeople, now their website has been down since Saturday. And I think that's because Musk's people brought it down. But if you were to find any news stories related to USAID, it all sounds very warm and fuzzy, that they're doing such nice things, that they're helping people in the third world. And presumably, as it relates to immigration, they're trying to stem the flow of illegal immigration into the United States. But the fact of the matter was, they're doing exactly the opposite. So what I was seeing when Musk was talking about USAID is he was talking about the corruption, which is rife in that organization, and there are many thousands of employees and their multi-billion-dollar budget. He was talking about how they're sending money back into the pockets of U.S. politicians. But I was thinking, this is way bigger than Musk knows, because the big question that people have been asking for quite some time is, who's funding illegal immigration into the United States? You see, when I started following migrants, the posse, the people who are watching this, who are also subscribers to my show, Ideas Have Consequences, they know that for 5 to 6 years, I've made 10 to 15 trips down to South and Central America, where I have been following into dangerous places, cartel country, into the Darien Gap, which is the Hotel California of jungles. And I've done it, Laurence, because I believe that not only was it the greatest human trafficking operation of modern times, maybe of all time, but it also was a great human tragedy. And that this needed to be exposed because it exposed the rot and the inhumane nature of globalists. So I wanted to bring attention to this. And it's Lori, and Lori, as recently as last fall, before I made my last trip into Darien Gap, she wasn't saying I shouldn't do it, but she said, do you think it's worth it? Do you think it's worth all the time and all the money and all the energy? Because there are things on your channel that really get traffic, and this isn't one of them. Your audience just doesn't seem very interested in this topic. And I had to do some real soul searching, even as recently as just a couple of days ago. I was wondering, did I really waste my time and risk my life for nothing to bring attention to all this? And then what do you know? Here I am doing an interview yesterday. I texted Bannon. Steve Bannon has a huge audience, War Room. And I said, Steve, Musk and Trump don't know the half of what's going on with USAID. And then I sent him video and pictures of their logo right where the cartels are loading people onto Zodiacs to go into the Darien Gap. I mean, they're working hand in hand with the cartels. And he texted back, wow. And so anyway, he had me on the show yesterday. And what do you know? President Trump, of all the things that he has to do, happened to be watching. And so he texted Bannon during a commercial break and said he was so grateful for, brave people going into Darien Gap and providing him with the information he needed, and that he wants us to provide him with a flow chart of how USAID is funding these other NGOs to facilitate an invasion of the United States. And I thought, finally, vindication. The president of the United States has finally seen the balloons I've been sending and wanting. I mean, you knew yesterday I was trying to get you to, to make Megyn Kelly aware of this, whether she had me on or not, at least bring attention to this, because USAID, they were seeing, Musk and Trump were talking about the bit of the iceberg above the water, and I was saying no, it is way worse than that. They're funding illegal immigration into your country. They're the ones who are funding it. And so I really wanted to make them aware of that. And fortunately, now they do. And Trump, in one of his texts said, we're going to destroy this organization and what they're doing. And I thought, it's so great to finally feel like that you were following. I felt like I was following where I thought the Lord wanted me to be, but I was thinking I'm not feeling the social media affection, if you know what I mean. It just feels like maybe I'm just not getting traction here, and maybe it's all for nothing. So I'm glad to see this happening. But USAID, what they were doing, Laza, you'll get a kick out of this. They're funding to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars, 25. So here's U.S. taxpayers to USAID, and then 25 NGOs that they send money to, all with anti-American motivation. So they're funding anti-Trump, anti-American propaganda in your country and in Europe. You just mentioned BBC, illegal immigration, sending money back into the pockets of U.S. politicians who are all going apeshit right now because they know that they are exposed. The rot of what they're doing is going to be, exposed. But they're funding one of the chief UN agencies they're funding is called IOM, the UN International Organization of Migration, sometimes OIM, Organization of International Migration. So you see that logo all over South America. So I leave Darien, I leave Colombia, I fly into George W. Bush Airport in Houston. And you know how when you get off the plane and you're going to go through passport control, you're dumped into these large galleries, these big hallways, and I see other people, a big crowd of people coming from another hallway, and they're going towards passport control. And I'm looking at my phone. I just turned my phone on, and I'm replying to text messages, and I just fall into line with these people, Laurence. Excuse me. I fall into line with these. Yeah, I fall into line with these people. And all of a sudden I look up and I notice they're all Hispanic. Every one of them. Every single one of them. And then I notice, Laurence, they're all carrying swag, bags and so forth with the IOM logo on it. And they all have lanyards that have on it. And they're in a special line that's kind of hidden away from where I'm supposed to be. And very quickly, a security guard says, "You're not supposed to be in this line. You're not supposed to be here." And I'm like, "Hey, what's going on here?" He says, "Sir, you need to leave." So these were people being flown into the United States, illegal aliens, funded by USAID, but meant to be hidden away from Americans coming into the country so that they wouldn't see it. So I very surreptitiously took my phone out and started taking pictures of all their little bags and so forth. I mean, this is what has been going on. And, the thing that really amazes me here, Laurence, and then I'll shut up and let you respond to this. Imagine the arrogance of people who are running this illegal human trafficking op, but they put their logo all over everything. I mean, it's incredible.
You can't come to any other conclusion at this juncture that, as everyone has been suspecting, that it's true, that the invasion of our country is organized from within our country, and as you proved, paid for by the West more broadly, I think it's just it's traitorous. I don't, I really don't think there's a punishment back.
Using your tax dollars.
Yeah, you and the same with us. Sorry, I've got my earphones are on like mute. I couldn't hear myself. It's the same with what's happening in England. It's exactly the same. You can't have the level of migration that both of our nations have seen and it not be deliberate. Totally and completely deliberate and designed to dilute and destroy the culture with which these leftists hate for some reason. And then I keep asking myself, why would they do it? What is the globalist agenda? And one supposes it's a borderless global utopia where, we're all global citizens and stuff like that. But since it's so unpopular, to go behind our backs when we've not voted for it and not asked for it ever, and do it, I think is treason, isn't it? I mean, in the olden days, people would have been put on trial for treason. And I wonder what will happen, when Trump finally gets around, because that he's only got these 18 months really before the midterms to do the most severe slashing of the deep state that he can possibly. But you just wonder whether he'll get round to the traitors who did this, or whether he's going to carry on this sort of strategy of being, quite magnanimous in victory, and whether he's going to put aside the emotion just so he can put aside things like revenge and retribution, just in order to decimate this horrible deep state which is destroying your country, which he's going to pull your country back from the brink. And one wonders whether he will to turn around and go, how do I make sure that this never ever ever happens again? Because the West was on the brink. If Harris had won that election, I would have said that it's over. America was finished. So come that close, it's pretty terrifying. And you think about what someone can do in that short period of time. Obviously, you start off with the grown-ups, so you start off with the Obamas, and everyone feels kind of guilty because they've been told they're racist relentlessly. But then people vote in Obama, I think probably because he was charismatic and he was actually quite moderate in his presentation, marriages between a man and a woman and all the things that he used to say before he started upping rhetoric on his anti-Americanism. So you start off with the sort of the moderates. In Great Britain, it was Tony Blair, education, 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 slamming the dispatch box in Parliament, and we're all like, oh, brilliant, he's going to, make sure the kids get educated. What he forgot to tell us was what he was going to educate them, which is, nation-hating trans cult stuff. But then you get onto the Biden-Harris administration, and they didn't even bother towards the end to have a Biden-Harris administration.
Yeah.
It was just the deep state. He was like, who is in charge of America? And you can see they won't stop until they've flown in as many as they can to the country, and they're doing it deliberately. They said in England that they're seeding. What they do with the migrants here is they put them in little rural towns in hotels, and they seed every single town. So there will be nothing left of Great Britain. Is
that your term, seeding? Is that your term, or have you seen that somewhere? That's a great term, because that's very descriptive and it's spot on. You're right with that.
Mm. And then we've had this obviously this atrocity that was committed last year, where this monster demon, actually, I think when you connect the atrocities he has, I don't see him as human. I think, and he massacred these 3 young girls and maimed and wounded many others. And our Prime Minister jailed people for saying that there was a terrorist link to this guy. And instead, this is what I hate about, what I worry about, how quickly a country can fall apart, is what I'm sort of trying to get to, is instead of going and being truthful with the public about the fact that this guy had been found with a terrorist manual, he deliberately targeted Taylor Swift fans, and Taylor Swift had concerts across Europe cancelled round about that period because she refused to support Hamas. Why anyone gives a shit what Taylor Swift thinks about anything, I don't know, but that's by the by. So he targeted these girls. He had an Al Qaeda, terror manual, and he was manufacturing ricin. And Keir Starmer, what he did, our vile socialist prime minister, was he went at they call him up in Southport where the massacre happened. They call him 19 seconds. He got out of the car, he walked along the road, he dropped off a wreath, and he was back in the car and gone in 19 seconds. And where did he go? He went to the mosque to apologize for any, to say, don't worry, we've got your back, we're going to keep you safe, and gave them millions and millions of pounds to look after himself. He despises and loathes his own people so much. So when all of this information comes out, we've got Southport was our own January the 6th in a lot of ways. We still have political prisoners in jail for saying that this country cannot put up with what's going on. So instead of turning around to the British people, the working class British people, who actually bleed and die for this country, instead of going around to them and trying to mollify them, what he does, and making sure he gets to the bottom of how this demonic little monster was radicalized, what he does is he turns around and he says he's going to bring in a definition of Islamophobia. I think it's the IAPC, they call it, the international, anyway, what it is. But it's the most appalling definition of a ridiculous, ludicrous, oxymoronic word, which is Islamophobia, because doesn't make any sense what is Islamophobia. So they're going to bring that in. So it's any criticism of Muslimness or perceived Muslimness. And this includes and goes on to the idea of burning a Quran, which a few people have now done. Now, I wanted to ask you a question. During COVID, I tweeted this morning, during COVID, it tended to be the Lone Rangers out there who took grown-up, logical, rational decisions, didn't get consumed by the mass formation psychosis, and they resisted. But we're going to have a blasphemy law in the United Kingdom when we haven't had a blasphemy law in the United Kingdom, where Islam is protected and no other religion is. So if you desecrate the Quran, that's a criminal offence now coming into the United Kingdom. So my thought was, we need to have a mass burning of any holy book of your choice. It doesn't really matter whether it's the Quran. I mean, it is the Quran. It's the only one that people will get upset about. But why don't we have a day when we gather together and all of us gather together and just have a mass burning of a holy book? Because if we don't do that in the United Kingdom, it seems to me that we lose one of the fundamental foundation stones of what it is to live in a free democracy. Do you think am I being over?
Pause for 1 sec. Give me 1 second. I'm in a hotel room. Just keep running, keep chatting, tap dance, juggle, do something to entertain the audience. Right. But I'm in a hotel room and I want to see if I have a Bible in here. Now I'm in Switzerland, just pretty godless, but hang on, you juggle for a second.
Larry's gone to check whether they got a Bible. I don't know. I'm not really a book burner as a rule. I don't like burning books, but I have a sense that perhaps if we all did it, if we all just got together and gathered and had a mass burning, maybe it's too much. I don't know. He's going to find the Bible and it's going to be in either French or German. So let's see how good Larry's French or German is.
Well, actually, I've looked in every drawer in here and there is no Bible. So there's no Gideon. But let's just pretend the 100 best in hotels. Let's pretend this is hotelers. Let us suppose that this is a Bible. Yeah. The Christian perspective isn't that this is holy. Now, I'm making a distinction between, I'm answering your question, but at the same time, I'm making a distinction between the way Christians think and the way Muslims think. Christians believe that God's word is holy, but not the paper and ink and Broadman, Holman, or Crossway, or whoever it is that prints your Bible. So for that reason, and sometimes I do this just to jar Christians in a Sunday school, because they've been programmed sometimes to think this, is I might use an actual Bible to prop open a door, or something like that. And because it enables me to spark a conversation to say, you do understand that the book isn't what's holy. We believe God's word, which is a concrete thing in Hebrew thought, unlike Greek thought where words are abstract. It says, the word became flesh. It means it in a very literal sense. But God's word is something that's, it's in the ether. It's eternal, and it's We can record it, but our recording of it isn't the holy thing. I don't know if I'm articulating this particularly well, but
You are
you follow
articulating
what
it.
I'm saying. So,
It's it's separate from the word is eternal. The book is
the book is
yeah,
just ink and paper, and
yeah.
Broadman Holman or whoever it is who makes your Bible, the Gideons, they don't have like some kind of contract with God that everything they're printing is itself holy, and therefore you can't put your drink on it, or you have to be very careful with it. Muslims take a very different view of it, and a weird view when it comes right down to it. And I've enjoyed kind of provoking some Muslims on that very thing. They say, well, how do you feel if you burn a Bible? And I say, well, burn all you want. We'll print more. I mean, it's not a problem for me. You could use it to build a house with it or do whatever you want with it. I wouldn't, because they're expensive. Bibles, 25, 30. Some of the nicer ones are $50, $75 each. But, each his own. You do what you want. You're not doing me injury, and you're not doing God injury. And it's not in itself a blasphemy. To me, it's just sort of a poor use of resources. But you see, from their point of view, they think of the thing itself, that it's holy. And that's ridiculous.
So can I ask a question? Do you do you think it would be because obviously, one of my it's either I've anointed myself to do it or it's just my thing, is that I sort of had to. So when I was away last week, someone said, How's it going? And I said, It's good. It's difficult being someone who says something first, which everyone else wants to say, but or does something first. So they go, I totally support tearing down the surveillance cameras to creating these 15-minute cities in this facial recognition software that basically means that we're under surveillance whenever we enter a town. And then the police come and arrest me. I know that I would be arrested for burning a Quran because apparently it would it would cause a problem. But if I was to burn a Bible and a Quran and I don't know, name any other holy
Book of
book,
Mormon.
the Book of Mormon, I think they would struggle to arrest me. I think they'd struggle to I think they'd try, but I think they'd struggle to. But what I want to know is, is there any wisdom to it? Do you understand why I would want to do it? Why I would want to do it is because to say, I'm really sorry, nobody if you want equality under the law, then everyone is equal under the law. You can criticize my religion. They do. London is an anti-Semitic shithole. Londonistan nowadays, so it's totally fine to be anti-Jew. It's sort of everyone looks the other way. But if you're not allowed to criticize Islam and mock ideas that you don't think are good ideas, then you don't live in a free society. So do you think there's any wisdom, A, in doing it? And B, do you think that if I did do it, I should caveat it by burning, the Book of Mormon at the same time?
Well, I think part of this conversation should be offline. I think this is a great question. I think it's a very interesting proposition. My instinct is to say that I kind of like it, but I also think that this is a conversation that we should have over the phone and mull through, what this looks like and the strategy for this. My own attacks on Islam are very bare knuckled, but I don't necessarily want to outrage. I think it should be legal to outrage, by the way. I think it should be
Mm.
legal to burn. I'm with you on that. But there are many Muslims who would see it, because they've been programmed to see it this way, as a great blasphemy and deep, deep offense to them. And I prefer to attack them on the historicity of their religion and the irrational nature of their religion. But let's just think, I wrote a piece back in 2015 after Charlie Hebdo that went viral. And the result was that Al Jazeera asked me to come, and would you come and debate the tenets of your article? Basically, what I did was I was comparing, as you are, I was comparing Islam, the alleged violence of Christianity, with the actual violence of Islam. So it's not about the Crusades and so forth, but specifically about Charlie Hebdo. And I'm going off the top of my head here, Laurence, and the audience, so I may not have these statistics exactly right, but they're pretty close. Of the 38 covers that Charlie Hebdo devoted to religious topics, and they were very blasphemous, or to Christianity, Islam, any other religion, of the 38, 21 of them dealt with Christianity. Do you know how many terrorist attacks that netted?
No.
0. 7 dealt with Islam, and that resulted in 3 terrorist attacks. So you see right off the bat a massive difference between Christianity and Islam as it relates to that. Richard Dawkins, who would tell me privately, he's ready to attack Christianity because Christianity, he knows it's going to blow up his house. I've been in conversations with him where it's being filmed, and I asked him something about Islam, and he asked for the cameras to be shut off because he doesn't want to go there. So he doesn't want to go there.
Is that not submission to
That's 100% submission. That's 100% submission, and I hate that. And I thought, listen, if you're gonna come out and say Jesus is fake and all this kind of stuff, you need to come out there and talk about what Islam actually is too. I mean, because it's not Christians who are the real threat to British society. And I will say this, in Richard's defense, he slowly come around on that. He slowly come to recognize, and in fact made this particular statement, that Christianity might be a bulwark, for something much worse. A Christianity that has actual teeth, intellectual teeth, spiritual teeth, because secularism has zero ability. It cannot resist Islam. It's getting steamrolled by Islam.
So when Solomon Monica was shot in Sweden, very soon after he was killed, and he was famously, he was known to most people for burning Qurans, but actually he was, his story was much deeper and more interesting than that, coming from that part of the world and watching what Islam did to his place of his birth. He was shot and killed, and within about an hour, this dreadful, I think a truly dreadful human called Bushra Sheikh said, I think burning of the holy book is a hate crime, and people who do so should suffer consequences. So
I saw this.
And I think that was a tacit support of the shooting of this guy.
100%.
Then I said, I'm going to buy a job lot of your holy book and I'm going to burn them. And the number of people who phoned me and said, you can't do this, you've got to think about your children, these people are insane, they're crazy, they're mad, you won't ever be safe ever again. And I thought, well, then Islam's won. Why bother having the conversation?
Well,
unless we turn around and say, by the way, you don't get special treatment, otherwise Islam will steamroll the entire world. And then the sad part of this, people telling me, don't do it, that's fine, I understand they care for my well-being, but the sad part of this is I've got a family member who's in a relation, who's, has a Muslim partner, and those two decided, once they made that point, that they would then withdraw from our wedding. This is how pathetically weak I find these oversensitive, murderous bullies. That's what I see Islam as. It's like, it's so terrible. You're oppressing us across the West. It's Islamophobic everywhere. Bang, bang, shoot. And it's or in this rather innocuous case of in my family, someone going, we're going to try our best to ruin your special day because we're oversensitive that you criticised our sky wizard. And as you say, this bulwark that's provided, but against, what is a very conquering and last word of God, end of days, death cult. What is the Christian message? My dad said, well, just read Mark 5, 6, and 7. Read that, or 6, 7, 8. Sorry, and I look at that and I'm like, well, this isn't a bulwark against Islam. This is powerless against Islam, in a way. Do you know what I mean? So I'm just trying to think, what does Christianity have to what does Christianity have to prevent Islam completely taking over everything?
Well, I want to back up to something that you said a little earlier, and that is the people calling you and telling you that these people are crazy. It is very important that people understand they are not crazy. The terrorists on 7/7 subway bombers, not crazy. The people who flew the planes into the sides of the buildings, not crazy. Charlie Hebdo terrorists, not crazy. These are people who are doing something that is perfectly rational given their worldview, meaning that if you ascribe to their worldview that Allah, who is really something of an arbitrary kind of God, and there's very little grace to be found with Allah, and the way to secure your heavenly bliss was to kill infidels, and the way to secure it for your family members was to kill infidels, to become a martyr for the cause, it makes perfect sense to do it. So I think secularists always think they're crazy, and that's because secularists believe this life is all you get, and there's nothing worth dying for. I, as a Christian, believe there's a lot of things worth dying for. So I can enter into their head. I can get into their head and see how it is that they think about this. It's just that I think their religion is irrational, non-factual, and I want to expose it for that. I agree with you about the weakness of the West. I also agree that the Christianity that we see in the West is very milquetoast. You know, it's interesting, Laz. I was reading a little short story, and when I was reading it, I thought I got to get Laurence to read this. It's by Russell Kirk, who was an American, very good friends with T.S. Eliot, but had strong, you know, he was an Anglophile. You know, he was educated in Britain and you know, lived there much of his life, and he had written this beautiful little short story, which I had subscribers to my channel read, and then we discussed, called Tenebris, Out of Darkness. And it's interesting because he's talking about this secularist mindset, and he's also giving, you know, kind of a picture of a church that's dead. Now, I want to be really clear. Russell Kirk was a believer. He was a very strong believer, but he keeps talking about in this story of preachers of the old breed. And what he meant by that was, and this short story was written in the 1950s. He's talking about, you know, preachers of a type that were alpha males and were not the kind of people you wanted to piss off because they were, you know, they were real men. I think both in your country and my country, throughout the English-speaking world, we are seeing a type of Christianity that is now, at least in my country, I think you're going to start seeing it rolled back. A pushback on this quite a lot, but frequently they're guys who are not necessarily woke. There is that element, but often that they're people, Laurence, that I just feel like don't really have any manly life experience. You know, they went to a Christian school and then straight to a Christian college, then straight to seminary, and then they're the pastor of a church dispensing wisdom they don't possess because they've had no real life experience to really test the mettle of their biblical belief and understanding. I think the Bible gives us a picture of a Jesus who was not a pacifist. There are those who want to make Jesus a pacifist. Jesus wasn't a pacifist. It's very interesting that Jesus, in his own self-defense, was rather passive. You know, he stood before Pilate and said nothing, Scripture tells us, because he'd already said everything that needed to be said, you know, at that particular point. But Jesus was quite strong in the defense of others. And Scripture also makes it very clear to us that he came to us the first time as a lamb. The second time, as C.S. Lewis puts it, it's an invasion. It's like Trump's second term on steroids. You know, that's the picture that Scripture gives us. So the God of the Bible is not a passive God who stands by and cares nothing, you know, for the least of these. I thought that what J.D. Vance said recently, I don't know if you saw this, which I thought was great because it shows he has theological depth. But he's in a conversation where someone is trying to say to him, I mean, you know, it's non-Christian. It really isn't very Christian to not care for immigrants who are flooding in. And he just dismissed it as complete idiocy. And he said, listen, there's a hierarchy of loves. To bring
starting with God
and to bring an illegal alien into your home and put him in bed with your children and let him eat your food and all these things doesn't make you a good Christian. It makes you a bad parent. And that doesn't mean you don't care about those people. As Lori and I, kind of under the radar, do as much as we can for many people who are in the third world. But that doesn't translate into me saying they all need to come into my country or come into my home. Sometimes quite the opposite. So two things can be true at once. I want machine guns on the border. I want lethal force protecting our border. But I also wanted to bring attention. I'm kind of changing the subject here. I apologize, but I've wanted to communicate to people throughout the Western world. You need to understand, and our migrants, as I've said to you, are better than yours because ours are generally coming from Catholic backgrounds. Yours are coming from Muslim backgrounds, which is entirely different. But I've wanted to say to people in my own country that two things could be true at once. We have to stop the invasion of our country, but we also need to see, and I'm not talking about the criminal elements or the cartels or whatever, that these people are being used. They're being used by globalists who don't care about them at all. And between A and Z, from their country into ours, roughly 250,000, as many as 500,000 children have just disappeared. And that's the fault of globalists who invited them and was just like, yeah, come on. And they don't care. They're just using them as a battering ram against the American people and the destruction of the United States and with it the Western world as we know it. So, the two things.
I get the sense that the globalists, certainly in England, the socialists, they think that they are using Islam, but they don't realize that it's not that way round at all, and that they are in order to get through some of their own agendas, which is Christian haters, because there's nothing a socialist hates more than a Christian, is that they will empower other religions. But these things are the idea to criticize bad ideas and free speech and stuff like this. These are foundation stones of our nation. I know they've been attacked at various times over the years, but even through all of history, England and Christians have had a very, very often, violent interactions with each other, but a very, very strong knowledge that these two systems, well, Islam is just a system of living, as far as I'm concerned. It's not a religion at all. But these two, for the secularists, these two ideologies are much better kept apart than they are intermingled in this terrible multicultural experiment that we see taking place in the United Kingdom. I don't know if it's reversible, so I'm kind of with you. I think you were probably going on to say, or maybe you were going on to say, but I wanted to go on to say that you have to have something to protect. You have to know what it is that you're protecting.
Yes.
Otherwise you're screwed. And one of the things I'm protecting is the right not to have my head cut off by disagreeing with someone about their ideology.
Well, and listen, my faith as a Christian, which is real and that's flawed, and I'm far from a perfect human being. I believe in fighting. I'm sitting and talking to good friends last night. We were talking about the left, and I said, I want to defeat these people. I want to defeat them. I believe that they're evil. I believe there are things worth fighting for. I believe there are things worth dying for. And hence the reason that I do what I do for a living. It isn't just a job that feeds my family. It's my calling. It's my mission. And those Christians who don't see it that way, I really question the authenticity of their faith. And I have to say this, for those of you who are listening, Laws and I were talking this past week, and we said, YouTube is choking us. So terrible. This next week, we need to be really careful in the way we talk about things. And we're not, 3 minutes into this show when we're doing all of this. But listen, I've responded this way, and you have too. But I see some of these people in church, and I hear some of these sermons from pastors, seminary graduates who find themselves, pearl clutching and hand wringing over, gosh, should I vote for Trump? Or, we should, it's not Christian to prevent these people from coming into our country. And gosh, we need to have compassion for, transgender rights and all this kind of nonsense, I think, what the hell is wrong with you? What Bible are you reading? You're not a Christian. You're not a Larry. You're too confrontational. We don't need that. That's not Christ-like. It's like, did what did you read the red letters in Scripture? I seem to recall he fashioned a whip of cords, and drove the moneylenders out of the temple and started flipping tables over. I, that Jesus is also the one who is also meek and mild. They're the same person. But what you guys have done is you've created a Jesus that isn't the real one. He's a God of your own making, to the exclusion of the other aspects of his character, which are justice, which is truth. I mean, the most politically incorrect statement in Scripture that seems to go over so many people's heads is John 14:6, where Jesus says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. It is so politically incorrect because he's dismissing every other truth claim. He's dismissing every other means of attaining heaven, every other means of life. And he's pointing out, you can't get to heaven but by me. That's it. I am. And so the idea, multiculturalism, the idea that all religions are, the same and they all take us in the same direction, utter nonsense. And that's the Jesus I know, and it's the Jesus I serve, and it's the one who gives me a mission to go forward and to do what I do. So I see my religion, Islam, is a philosophy of conquest. Well, I believe in a Christianity that is one of conquest as well, that it's of a different kind of conquest. It's not about physical enslavement. It's not about gaining territory. It's about conquering, gaining, winning souls. And that's the one that I ascribe to. And that's the way a world is changed. You see, the left sees it as changing the world from top down. They're interested in human beings only in the abstract. I love the way Dostoevsky put it. He said something to the effect of, in the Brothers Karamazov, the the typical European liberal loves man in general, just not in the specific. And something that separates Christianity from leftist ideology is, I'm sitting, at the WEF, as I was, a couple of weeks ago, whenever it was, and they're talking in terms of changing the world, of the masses, these unnamed, faceless masses. And the Christian faith says, love your neighbor. Start there. Minister to the Samaritan who is in the ditch, the person who is right next to you, the people with actual faces. The Christian faith is actually dirty work. It's about rolling up your sleeves and actually getting in the lives of people to help them, to be there, to rejoice with those who rejoice and weep with those who weep. You've done some of that with me as I'm going through what I'm going through with my own mom. You ministered to me, encouraged me. We're not to the point of weeping, but we're at the point of, certainly wanting comfort in all those things. That's what it means to be a Christian. But you see, the left thinks in terms of abstract. We think, nope, not interested in the abstract. I'm interested in that guy right over there, and I can help him. And in so doing, the world can be changed. But Christianity the Bible doesn't speak in terms of changing the world. It's about changing the life of that person right there.
Yeah.
And that's what makes our faith very real and very different.
And actually that is the bulwark. You've just described the bulwark. That's the bulwark. It's to say you may come in your hordes and you will not stop me because I've picked up him and he's picked up someone else and she's picked up that and we are an unconquerable. You cannot kill. You cannot kill. It's why you cannot kill God. You can't kill him. Whereas Islam it seems to be hell bent on killing everybody who doesn't believe in their God, and that seems to be a stupid thing. But I'm with you on. I get that. It's very. It's encouraging to think that, because that is how I think. I don't think, and I think it's why Jordan Peterson's original message before he jumped sideways to become a theologian was it had some basis in that idea, which is the fact that it's about the person, the individual, the people next to you, all of that sort of stuff, which is why I was so hurt by this wedding cancellation. I just thought, why
Yeah.
would you want to hurt? What sort of insecure, insensitive, fragile little ideology do you follow that you would deny me a relationship with your children, who I get on with really well? So, so I look at that and then I go, and I was talking to it, I was trying to work out how to feel about it. And originally I felt really angry, but now I'm just like, you know what? There's no point in me being angry with you. You have to make these decisions and live with them yourself. It's not up to me. But it is interesting that this particular individual has more lectures for me than anybody else I know. Is
It's
more than
virtue
happy.
signaling. It's
It's
virtue
because
signaling.
they see me in the abstract. They see me. The thing is, it's like, if only you would conform to our abstract version of what humanity is and how humanity should behave, then I can tolerate and should display love to you. But if you don't conform to that, I can't. And I go, I don't care who you are, and this I don't care who you are, where you've come from. I speak to Muslims all the time. I speak to a lot of people all the time, and I afford everyone the same level of respect and love as I would anybody else, because I just think, well, I'm going to learn something from you. You're a unique and wonderful individual. You're created by God. Whether you happen to believe whatever you believe doesn't mean that you're not there to be pointed in the right direction. It just got to me so much for that. I just thought, why would you pick that day of all days to decide that you're going to be virtuous? And then I was told in a very, very patronizing WhatsApp message that, if I wanted to sit down with a bunch of elders to discuss it, and my response was, do we need to sit down I'm very happy to sit down with a bunch of elders. Just, I don't think we need their advice on whether you're going to attend our wedding or not.
Yeah, I
You
mean,
know?
well, listen, at the end of the day, these are the kind of people that I find at the West.
Yeah.
And they're the kind of people that's virtue signaling. They don't actually rub elbows with the people that they supposedly feel so virtuous towards.
They
They're
wouldn't.
not the kind of people who are engaging in that realm and in that world at all. And I want to say this about Islam and about Muslims. I hate Islam as an ideology. It's an evil ideology. I do not hate Muslims.
Mm.
As you know, I will soon be in Egypt. And the Egyptian people, I enjoy immensely. They're generally a very friendly people. I enjoy the food. They're very gracious, very kind to me. Many of them, friends, know exactly where I stand on this particular issue. But they also know that I respect them as human beings who are made in the image of God, just as I am. I just think that they've been deceived in terms of what they believe. And of course, the majority of Muslims are not terrorists or would be terrorists. They themselves, avoid the Hadith and the Quran and don't model themselves after the life of Muhammad. But no, those are people that I'm called to love. But that doesn't mean that I don't also have the right to defend myself against terrorists of any stripe, whether it's of a religious one or a secular one, whatever it is. And I believe that the defense can take on the form of lethal force. For instance, Daniel Penny in the subway, I, as a Christian, applaud Daniel Penny. He applied a proper force. He did what he should have done in the protection of innocence. And at the end of the day, Christianity, we are called to be protectors of innocence. And that starts with our children. And then it extends in ever growing circles, outward from that. And in my work, I have felt so passionate on the issue of immigration in part because of what is happening to so many of these people who are so naive, who are disappearing. And I have also thought this, Laurence, and this kind of brings us back to Trump. Trump is Donald Trump is not he's not insensitive to human beings. He cares about real people. And while Donald Trump is rightly deporting people from our country and he's rightly defending our borders, I think Donald Trump yesterday, when he saw what I was talking about and was revealing the human tragedy of Darien Gap and this entire human trafficking op, Donald Trump looks at that and says, that won't stand. I'm going to do something about that. And one of the ways I'll do it is to topple Maduro in Venezuela to make life tolerable for these people in their own country so they can stay there. Did you see what he was tweeting about South Africa?
Yeah.
I mean, he cares
He's
what's happening to those people, and he said that's not going to stand. I will not allow it.
Yeah. And as you quite rightly say, this is the whole purpose of the most. This is why we're so lucky to have America on this earth, and how seismic the election was, this last election. I genuinely think the most important in American history in so many
Probably.
ways. It is that it is the job, as you said yourself, it is the job of the biggest, most powerful nation on earth to make sure that the rest of the world is safe and is looked after, and that the best interests of the most powerful nation on earth are not undermined by those who will seek to undermine it. Like the Colombian president sending those guys back, and Trump's like, okay, 25% tariff. The way he spoke to Trudeau. Trudeau came out with this. Did you watch the first Trudeau speech? It was hilarious.
I did.
Trudeau's like going, well, he always sounds like he's.
And Trump overturned his calls, which I thought was hilarious.
But also, Trump is Trump is such an art of the deal guy. He's just turning around and you turning around and he tries it. He threatens something, and then everyone's up in arms, and then he gets what he wants. It's so much better. And I've got this weird feeling, a very weird feeling, that I have a feeling that Trump and Putin are going to become good friends this time round.
But here I am in Switzerland, and I think the temperature outside right now is about 30 degrees. And I have the doors open to try to give you something of a view.
What's that in it?
And I am baking. I am baking. Oh, gosh, what is that in English temperature? That'd be what? Is that 0? Is that about 0?
Okay.
And yet, sitting here in the sun, I am sweating. I am baking. I have little beads of sweat on my forehead. The sun is just coming down on me, but it is a gorgeous day here today. People are going to be skiing, having a big time. I'm supposed to go up on top of the mountain later with some friends. That should be a lot of fun. And then in a couple of days, I head to Cairo, and the next episode of WTF will be in Cairo, and that should be a lot of fun. But listen, chin up, my friend, my good British friend, because what Starmer is doing, what your government is doing, is utterly evil. But their day is coming. Their day is coming. And I think this. Two things I want to say about something you said, much earlier in the podcast. I don't want Trump seeking revenge. Justice is a completely different thing. There needs to be justice for these people who were, as you pointed out, treasonous, seeking the destruction of our country, using American tax dollars to subvert American government, American society. So I want justice, not revenge. Second thing, I really believe, and I think you'll agree with me in this, that we have to pray for Trump. We have to pray for J.D. Vance, because I think if the left thought before the election that they needed to assassinate him, you better believe they're thinking it right now. And that's that ripple effect out to not just within our government, but foreign governments who are sucking on the hind tit of the American taxpayer. You better believe that those are people who want Donald Trump dead. And he spoke to this. I'm not sure if it was yesterday or a couple of days ago, but he said that if he's assassinated, he has left orders for what is to be done. And so Trump is very aware that these things are possibilities. And the dismantling of the deep state, they're not going to go quietly into the night. They are going to be fighting. So I would encourage those of you out there who are praying people to be praying. We're commanded in Scripture to pray for our magistrates anyway, but we really need to be praying for him and praying for J.D. Vance because they are a threat to a hornet's nest of evil. And, the first thing they did, first day in office, they came in and said, you know what, give me that stick. I'm going to go over there and hit that hornet's nest. I'm going straight after it.
First day. I love it. I'm so happy. That you've made me feel happy about the fact that justice is coming in our direction too. It's unavoidable, so it will come. Well, I love you, my brother, and I'll let you shut your window, and we'll have and stop sweating, and then we will be more organized now that my traveling is kind of drawn to a conclusion for a bit, because we're trying to sort out a wedding, we're trying to do all of this, and I'm trying to write this book. So everything is, hopefully I won't be running across the world, and we will be back on your screens on your usual regular time. And we apologize for our slight uselessness in scheduling, because it's a great pleasure for us to talk. And you teach me a great deal anyway, and I quite like filling in our viewers on your side of the pond about what's going on in the slow destruction of the United Kingdom. But love you, and love to your family.
Thank you, brother. Sentiments exactly the same on our end. And I want to say this, Lacey, she's not seen here, but she is one of our producers, and she does a great job, and she puts up with our nonsense and all the audio visual problems, which are just seem endless. I preferred the days back when what you did was you just appeared and you talked on the phone. And these days, it's almost like you have to have a tech crew that follows you around the world in order to do an interview anymore. But listen, I think we're winning. I think we're doing some great things. Yesterday, to me, was huge vindication of years of work that I have been doing. And to get an attaboy from the President of the United States, says he's grateful for you as a brave man. I thought, that's, you could put on my tombstone, there were people who said that guy is a POS, but I also want written on my tombstone that Trump said he's a brave man, and I'm grateful to it.
It is amazing, and it is vindication, and it's great when the Lord gives you that. You feel like, all the striving was worth it. I remember that right at the beginning when I started doing what I do. A man said to me, a very wise man said to me, "You're going to get beaten up, and you are going to make a difference, and no one's ever going to say thank you. That's the rest of your life. Welcome to it." But he said you will make a difference.
Well, I say thank you. No, I'm appreciative of you. And I know there are a lot of people who feel the same way. And by the way, people, drop in the comments that you're grateful for Laza. Let him know that you appreciate him, because it matters. The little words of encouragement put a bounce in your step and make you think, okay, it's worth it. I can keep going. I can keep doing what I'm doing. And brother, I am appreciative for you, because you are a fighter and I'm a fighter. And that's what attracted me to you to begin with, as I saw your, commercial when you were running for mayor of London. And I started watching it, and I'm going, yes, this guy needs to be mayor of London. But since you're not mayor of London, at least you could be my friend, which is really kind of a poor consolation.
Well, it's actually a better deal for me. You want to be mayor of that shithole? Sorry, no, that's not fair. London can be made good. London needs to be made great again. If they steal your capital city, then the rest of the country goes soon after. So we need to take it back. Anyway,
all right, brother. Well, listen, you take care. Bye-bye from Switzerland. And the next picture you see will be me on the very top of the Matterhorn. This has been another episode of WTF.
The winning, according to Taunton and Fox.